But they're all very, very worried because the truth is, contrary to what your neoliberal auntie told you or your Republican uncle, and of course, it goes both ways. You could have a neoliberal uncle. You get the drill. But contrary to what they told you, the country's not center right. It's not conservative. It's actually progressive. And what we're learning through the Occupy movement, what we're learning through the Bernie movement, what we're learning through, Ocasio-Cortez's and all these mini movements, Fight for 15, Green New Deal, Black Lives Matter, No DAPL, a lot of actual gasp traditionally more Republican people, they're actually for progressive policies. Do I have to remind you? Do I have to remind you, folks? This great tweet, courtesy of Warren Gunnels, who is a senior advisor to Bernie Sanders. 70% of the country want Medicare for all. Within that, 52% of Republicans want Medicare for all. 60% free public college tuition. They want it. This isn't all Democrats. This is the entirety. Democrats, Republicans, aliens. They all want. 60% want free public college. 58% want $15 minimum wage, which, by the way, Bernie Sanders just produced that bill out of the Senate today. 72% want to expand Social Security. 57% break up the big banks. 64% legalize the weed. 65% jobs guarantee. And I will add to this, 81% want a Green New Deal. And the new poll that shows 59% want taxes, the highest marginal tax rate, to go up to 70%. So that's not a conservative country, folks. That's not exactly a country screaming, oh my gosh, it's too radical. This is too much. We must, close our inhibitions. We must bow to these holy job creators. No. No. The majority of this country, from the east to the west, Rust Belt, the south, from the water to the farms, they want rich people to pay more. They actually want to end all of these fucking nonstop, never-ending wars. And they want a progressive tax system. And by the way, let's just call it what it is. When the majority of the country wants certain policies and the public figures, the public servants that they elected won't give it to them, what do you call that? You call that a kidnapping. You call that a heist. You call that a theft. You call that a hijacking of our democracy. Because we're not being represented. If we were being represented, here's how representation works. The people that you represent, they want this. They want X. And you, the representative, you come to them and you give them that. Of course, sometimes politicians might differ with their constituents, but we don't actually have a democracy. We don't have even a republic, because the majority, the mass majority, want progressive policies. However, we're constantly told by the oligarchy that has hijacked our government, bought off by Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, did I say it right? Whatever. And Raytheon, and Goldman Sachs, and Exxon, and I could go on and on. We're told, hey, slow your roll. Change happens in little crumb bites, Little crumbs. Sometimes you could dip it in olive oil, but change happens in crumbs. And, the country's not ready for the radical change you're espousing. Harry, I'm sorry to tell you, Harry. I'm very sorry to tell you, but it's over for you, Harry. And it's almost over for the Democratic Party, because the people are wising up to this. The people are wising up. And, it's always interesting because the Harry Reids of the world, and of course, if CNN brought this up, you think CNN is going to be like, well, Harry, actually, what you're saying doesn't really make sense, because the new poll shows 59% of Americans actually support Ocasio-Cortez. How many times have you seen on CNN lately, or the New York Times, or any of these, papers of record, or the worldwide leader in news? Do you really see these progressive polls shown to you often? Do you see polls that show progressive policies are overwhelmingly backed by the majority? No. You see polls you see polls that show you Joe Biden is leading the pack. You see Daily Kos straw polls, that progressive website showing you Bernie Sanders is in last place. He shouldn't even run. Chuck Todd actually represented the Daily Kos poll as a progressive poll. Just so you know what we're dealing with, because you're not just dealing with Harry Reid and the old guard Democratic Party. You're not just dealing with the current Democratic Party, which, I mean, they're hysterical. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, shut your mouth, get in the back, and stop making noise. Stop threatening to primary, Democrats. You should be going after the Republicans, not your own. This is what they're saying. Bernie Sanders, stop existing, damn it. Not only do you have that, but the great Katie Halper, who always is finding fun stuff, Katie Halper found this gem on the Twitter. So if you're unfamiliar, there is a woman named Sally Albright. She's a Democratic Party operative. She actually has worked with Republicans too, but in this backward society we live in, she's, dubbed by many as, progressive. So Katie Halper found Sally Albright, who basically runs a network of bots who exists to take on Bernie Sanders, Nina Turner, Tulsi Gabbard, and all these people. Katie Halper collected some of her tweets recently. So here's Katie. Sally Albright gets paid to run a bot network. I hope she shares some of the money with the people she's outsourcing this work to help spread smears. It's pathetic that she can't even do her own job, but cool to trace their manufactured narratives. So let's take a look at some of that manufactured narrative. Crowdsourcing some research today. Oh, research. I'm looking things up, but if anyone has articles or threads on these topics, I'd be most appreciative. Video of Bernie telling Jane not to stand next to him, because obviously that's been long rumored. Hey, Jane, go stand in New Hampshire. Don't stand next to me here in Vermont. Video of Bernie on Ortega Castro. Anything about palling around with dictators. Yeah, palling around with dictators like Obama with the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, the King of Jordan. We don't like palling around with dictators. Fidel Castro has always been the American boogeyman. So that was one of them. Let's see. There's more. Why Medicare for All isn't actually single payer. That's interesting. Bernie insulting black people. Okay, so we're really looking for the highest, most prestigious information here. Bernie mathematically eliminated from the primary. I didn't realize you could actually be mathematically eliminated before any votes are taken, any elections are held, and the superdelegates have actually been diminished, we think. We'll have to look into that further because I don't quite buy it yet. But apparently there's a way that Bernie Sanders has already been mathematically eliminated before even announcing he's run for his run for president. She also wants video of Bernie snatching the microphone out of Congresswoman Etsy's hand at March for Our Lives. She wants video of the Parkland kids rejecting Bernie, and lastly, she wants convention shenanigans, especially the flyer for the meeting about not voting for Democrats, and she wants which primaries Bernie meddled in. So Katie Halper actually, this is how, essentially, this is kind of, I don't know if it's exactly correct the record, but this is kind of like their meetings that are supposed to be hidden out in the public. I don't know why she's putting all this out there in public, but this is how propaganda works. And let me explain more about this. But the interesting thing about this is, let me show you. So people like Sally Albright, they start the propaganda on Twitter. Then they get a network of bots to push this nonsense. Then it gets picked up by Democratic Party lawmakers who push this stuff. Like, when did Bernie push a black person? I remember Bernie actually, when Black Lives Matter activists interrupted one of his speeches, Bernie actually moved in the back and gave them the microphone. As opposed to Hillary Clinton, who you remember at her private fundraiser with some rich people, her security couldn't get that black woman out quick enough who wanted to protest. So this kind of propaganda starts on Twitter, then Democratic Party politicians pick it up, then Politico, NBC News pick it up, and before you know it, it's fact of these bullshit about Bernie. And it doesn't just work for Bernie. It works against Nina Turner, Tulsi Gabbard, Elizabeth Warren, you name it. It's worked against Jimmy Dore, me. This is how, like, the Jimmy Dores of the world in a CNN article are called, like, the alt left or whatever they called him. It's ridiculous.